Joining me in the studio, Conservative MP Jonathan Gullis, Labour's Shadow Cabinet Office Minister Baroness Chapman, Polly Mackenzie, who was Nick Clegg's senior advisor when he was Deputy Prime Minister, and the Conservative commentator Albie Amankona. Today, how can the biggest rail strikes for 30 years be stopped?
We need the union barons to sit down with Network Rail and the train companies and get on with it.
The entire country needs a resolution, and they will not forgive this government if they do not step in and resolve it.
More strikes are planned later this week, but the boss of Network Rail says there's a deal to be done.
We can offer a good pay rise to our colleagues and add good value to the taxpayer if only we can get sensible reforms in.
We'll ask the General Secretary of the RMT Union if he'll accept that.
We will prosper and flourish and thrive as never before if we leave the European Union on June the 23rd.
That was 6 years ago, but a new report says Brexit is being thwarted by woke dogma. We'll ask what that means. And remember the 1970s? Are we heading for a summer of discontent?
Government, you don't want the country to go to pot, or at least not normally.
Are you excited about it, Albie, or are we going back to the bad old days of the 1970s?
No, I don't think we are going back to the bad old days of the 1970s, but if we were, I'd like us to get back to 70s levels of childhood obesity, 70s levels of home ownership and 70s levels of family breakdown. But as I said, we're not going to be going back to the 1970s. I think there's a lot of things that we can look forward to, as Jenny has said, and also as Jonathan has said. But we are through this difficult point at the moment of trying to deal with this industrial action. And we desperately need to find a way forwards on it. All right, well, that's what we're going to discuss in some detail. But before, is the government also throwing flames, if you like, on this whole dispute, Albie, by proposing to the union strike breaking and by bringing in agency workers? Is that going to help? I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. The government should be legislating to minimise the impact of these strikes on the British people. I think they should also be bringing in minimum service requirements. One asks the question why a government with an 80-seat majority, where it might be smaller later on this week, isn't bringing in this legislation right now or didn't already bring it in. Right, it was suggested in 2015. Why didn't you bring it in then?
Well, I was elected on the 2019 manifesto, Joe, and ultimately that manifesto does make those commitments to a minimum service requirement. And it does also talk about the fact that Albie's right. We're not just talking about agency workers in their traditional sense. Grant Shapps has been very clear. We're talking about people existing in Network Rail with transferable skills. You can go.
Albie? Brexit is complicated, but I'm optimistic for the future. As for the Conservative Party, I think we need to stop coming up with reasons why we're not doing things. We have a once-in-a-generation chance with an 80-seat majority to really make a huge difference in this country, and I feel that we're squandering it. You know, last year, Ian Duncan-Smith led a recommendation review, the Task Force for Innovation, Growth and Regulatory Reform, where he came up with over 100 excellent regulatory reforms that we could pass through now that we've left the European Union. That was developed in coalition with people from all sides of the Brexit debate. I'm not sure if anything has happened on that. I think it was published a year ago this week. So is woke dogma holding it back? No, that's complete nonsense. What is holding it back is this government's inability to pass legislation with an 80-seat majority. We've got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to deliver the reforms that this country needs, and I feel that we're squandering it.
Just it. I'm not saying that that's, you know, it's wrong to be discussed.
What I'm saying is,
the point I'm trying to make.
You can't even say it without people saying you're
Do you really think it is politically viable to argue that we should rejoin the single market, 2 years after we've left? This is not the point. It's about whether or not it is politically viable.
Where is growth going to come from?
Growth could come from the reforms that were in the Task Force for Innovation, Growth and Regulatory Reform. There are so many reforms, over 100, I think, in that report, including reforms to GDPR, reforms to clinical trials, reforms to what pension funds can invest in that could deliver growth. The government has 2 years now, before the next general election, to get on with it and implement some of those reforms so that the electorate votes for us at the next general election.
Can I just clear up?
But when you've got fantastic academies like Michaela in the system, but we haven't got enough of them, or enough Catherine Birbalsings across the country.
Michaela's not a grammar school.
I know Michaela's not grammar, but Catherine Birbalsing, there's not enough of her in the education system.
But I'm not sure Catherine Birbalsing would actually agree with you that we need more grammar schools. And I actually agree with Catherine on this, who is, of course, the government's social mobility SAR. She's done an amazing job with the Michaela School. There are other schools in London, the Brampton Academy, which outperformed Eton, I think, on Oxbridge places last year. And with the whole question of grammar schools, it seems to me like yesterday's solution for tomorrow's problem. And actually what we need to be focusing on are the solutions today, which we know work, like Michaela, like Brampton Manor, and replicating them across the entire school system in Britain.
Do they boost